92 to 95 FM, 810 medium wave, and on digital radio. BBC Radio Scotland.
You're listening to Good Morning Scotland. It's 24 minutes to 9. A leading oil industry figure has claimed that the Scottish Government's predictions for North Sea oil recovery are simply too high. The figure of 24 billion barrels is quoted in the White Paper as an estimate from the industry body Oil and Gas UK. But Sir Ian Wood estimated production would be down to a sixth of the current levels by 2050. The Scottish Government says Sir Ian is entitled to his views, but there's a wealth of expert opinion on the huge scale of Scotland's long-term oil and other energy reserves and the opportunities which that will offer Scotland as an independent country. Well, we're joined now from Aberdeen by Kenny Anderson, who's Managing Director of Anderson Construction and a member of the pro-independence group Business for Scotland. And here in Glasgow, we have Tom Greatrex MP, who's the Shadow Energy Minister and who speaks for the Better Together campaign. Morning to both of you.
Morning, Healy.
Kenny Anderson, does what Sir Ian Wood is saying now, his clarification of the figures and vastly reduced from what is in the White Paper, does this blow a massive hole in the economic case for independence?
No, not at all. Oil and gas is a huge bonus to the Scottish economy. Excluding oil and gas revenue, GDP per head in Scotland is equal to the UK. So oil and gas is a huge bonus. Now, these assessments of what's left...
A huge bonus in terms of the figures which have been quoted in the White Paper, among other places.
Yeah, they've been quoted in many different places and there are many different assessments. Since I was a teenager in the early 1970s and oil was discovered, there's been a continual assessment, and it's always a very low assessment when there's discussion about constitutional change or there's elections on the scene.
Well, not low enough, according to Sir Ian Wood. I mean, he's accusing various sources, including the media, of using the higher range of his reserves forecast between 12 billion and 24 billion, a lot of it concentrating around the 24 billion mark, when he says somewhere in the middle, around 15 billion, is much more accurate.
Well, Sir Ian is a very respected figure both in business and in the oil and gas industry. And if you read his comments in detail, he was actually also talking about some of the pessimistic forecasts, and his figures blow out of the water the Office for Budget Responsibility figures that have been punted around by Better Together and by Westminster.
They also seem to blow out of the water the figures in the White Paper, though.
Yeah, well, Professor Howell and Sir Donald Mackay are both experienced in this area, and their assessments are slightly different as well. Now, when I heard Sir Ian speaking this morning, he did emphasise it was an assessment, and different people are creating a different assessment. Now, whatever it is, 15 billion is barrels, which is what Sir Ian is reckoning, is an absolutely fantastic bonus and gives us a platform in the next 25 years to build and diversify the Scottish economy so that we can strengthen the economy from an already strong standpoint if you exclude oil and gas.
So Tom Greatrex, much better to have what's in the North Sea than not, is what Kenny is saying.
Well, Ian Wood, and I heard your interview with him earlier on this morning, Hayley, and you could not fail to see his irritation at the way in which what he said has been misquoted and the way in which things he said have been used, and ignoring the two small but significant words up to when he's talking about the barrels of oil equivalent that may be available. But look, the point he's making...
But he also criticised the pessimism.
The point which is very clear from what he's been saying, both to you this morning and last night and yesterday, is that when we're talking about this, we should be thinking about the amount of oil that's available and taking a cautious assessment. The problem for the Yes campaign, the problem for Alex Salmond, is that he has spent the last year or so going around talking about basing all of his assertions on 24 barrels of oil equivalent, when it could be up to 60% less than that. That's something which blows a great hole in the argument for leaving the UK. And it's not just an issue for us talking here today. It's for every single one of my constituents in Rutherglen and Hamilton West, who in 4 weeks today are being asked to vote on a proposition that is based on 24 billion barrel equivalent to pay for the plans for independence, and it will be them that will suffer from a position where that money isn't available in the way in which it's suggested.
Similarly, the UK government uses figures from the Office of Budget Responsibility, which, Sir Ian Wood and others would say are overly cautious and pessimistic as well. So surely the key here for voters especially, is to try to get to, a figure which people in the industry and elsewhere believe to be accurate.
Well, on the OBR figures, and it's very important this point because the OBR actually overestimated, when you look at the full returns from the last fully available year, overestimated the amount of revenue that was available, as did the Scottish Government. The Scottish Government by 3 billion, the OBR by 2 million. The OBR, when they revised their figures, took into account all of the issues around the level of exploration, the level of production to get to their revised figures. But what Ian Wood is talking about, and it's very clear in his report which he's done, and I don't think it could be any more credible and expert, given the report that he has just undertaken, an incredible amount of detail about maximising economic recovery, is even taking into account and making the changes that he's suggesting, which the government are taking forward.
Well, no, they haven't. They've actually lured already some of the points that Sir Ian made. And
well, no, they haven't.
The debate is entering.
They're implementing
this debate has got
from
to
the
be.
UK
Well,
CS
they
maximising
introduced
economic recovery.
changes to bareboat chartering allowances, which discourage exploration.
But that isn't to do with the report that Sir Ian Wood has produced, which was produced in February, and which the government, through the infrastructure bill, are taking forward, introducing. Now, those measures are important because what Ian Wood's talking about...
The debate is heading towards stewardship, and if you look at the history of the stewardship of the oil and gas industry under Westminster regimes, they've treated it as a cash cow, and with successive energy minister changes every 6 months, and with cash raids like we had in 2011, which incidentally is part of the cause of the drop in revenues which resulted in the OBR miscalculations, they have demonstrated a complete disregard for the importance of the oil and gas industry. Now, it represents about 15 to 18% of the Scottish economy. We can use what's left of the oil and gas in the North Sea as a platform. But the Scottish Government last week commissioned a report to explore the reserves west of Shetland, west of the Outer Hebrides, in the Clyde Basin and the Solway Firth. There is no reason to suspect that the geological finds that have so far given evidence that there may well be strong reserves there are not correct, but we need to know more. But it's all about the stewardship, how we use, in the way that Norway used their oil fund.
Yes, Sir Ian Wood did make the point, though, that his estimates actually go beyond the Clare field. They actually assume other levels of exploration and new fields coming on stream, which we don't actually know about. So in that way, they are perhaps slightly optimistic. We'll have to leave it there. I'm very sorry. Thank you both very much for your time this morning. Kenny Anderson in Aberdeen and Tom Greatrex, MP here in Glasgow.
The time is